It bears an image on it, ventral, front, and back dorsal, of a human figure.
It shows a very faint sort of image of a crucified man. And the crucified man calls us to remember Jesus' death and resurrection.
Deep inside a climate-controlled server room, a supercomputer is currently processing millions of data points from a single object, a 14-foot strip of ancient linen. It's hunting for order in the chaos. Suddenly, the algorithm stops. It catches a signal. The AI has identified a repeating symmetrical signal embedded in the Shroud of Turin. This isn't a stain, it's a sequence. This discovery has forced physicists to ask a question they never thought they'd ask. Is the world's most famous religious relic actually a record of a nuclear-level event that physics can't legally explain yet? It wasn't paint, it was data. For years, the narrative was simple. This 14th-long cloth was a medieval hoax, a clever painting made to fool the masses. But here's the catch. When the AI analyzed the chaotic fibers of the linen, it stopped. It detected a signal. Beneath the faint, haunting image of the man, the computer found a repeating mathematical symmetry. This is a pattern that no medieval artist could have created. In fact, no known natural process can explain it. Basically, the AI found a digital ghost locked in the threads. To understand why this is such a game changer, you have to look at the details. The image on the shroud is unbelievably superficial. It rests only on the very topmost microfibers of the linen threads. We are talking about a depth of just a few hundred nanometers. To put that in perspective, a single human hair is about 80,000 nanometers thick. This image is thinner than a soap bubble. The color doesn't soak into the cloth like paint, dye, or ink would. If you slice a thread crosswise, the center is white. The image sits on top like a scorch mark. There are no brush strokes. There is no directionality. It's more like the fibers themselves were chemically altered by a rapid burst of energy. When the AI looked at this, it didn't see art. It saw a data set. The neural networks performed a technique called principal component analysis. This is a fancy way of stripping away noise to find the core truth. What emerged was a field of information. The brightness and darkness of the image followed a precise, predictable rule, almost like a physical law of distance. Imagine a cloth being draped over a body. If you were to paint that, you would use shading to trick the eye. But the shroud doesn't use shading. The AI confirmed that the intensity of the image corresponds perfectly to the distance between the cloth and the body. The closer the cloth was to the skin, the darker the image. The farther away, the lighter. It's a perfect mathematical map. It gets crazier. The AI detected faint repeating symmetries and ratios throughout the body. Think of it like a musical harmony, but for your eyes. The distance between the eyes, the proportions of the hands, the curvature of the ribs. They all obey an underlying geometric scaffolding. These patterns were invisible to the human eye for centuries, buried in the visual noise of the fabric's weave. But the AI saw them clearly. This suggests the image wasn't created by a human hand touching the cloth. A forger in the Middle Ages would have needed to be a master physicist, a mathematician, and a nanotechnologist to pull this off. They would have had to paint with invisible geometry. The AI essentially proved that the image behaves less like a drawing and more like a projection. Scientists are now faced with a mind-bending reality. The world's most famous relic might be a highly advanced piece of information technology created by a process we still don't understand. The AI didn't solve the age debate. It just made it irrelevant. Because even if this cloth is from the Middle Ages, how did they encode 3D data into linen fibers? It's like finding a QR code in a painting from the 1400s. It simply shouldn't be there. The AI has revealed that the shroud is not just a picture. It is a document containing verified data that we are only now developing the tools to read. But it goes deeper. The AI also analyzed the noise around the body. In a forgery, the background is usually empty or painted over. In the shroud, the AI found that the background contains data silence. It means the imaging process was selective. Whatever created the image only affected the cloth where the body was present, but it did so with a level of collimation, meaning the energy rays were perfectly parallel, which we can only achieve today with lasers. If you take a flashlight and shine it on a wall, the light spreads out. It gets fuzzy. The shroud image is not fuzzy. It is razor sharp at a microscopic level. This implies that the light or energy that made the image didn't spread out. It moved in a straight line, defying the inverse square law of physics. The AI flagged this as a physical anomaly. So we are looking at a cloth that seems to have captured a moment where the laws of physics were temporarily suspended. The machine didn't just find a pattern. It found a map to something much darker that challenges the laws of thermodynamics. The map hidden in the scorch. So here's the deal. To really grasp why this AI discovery is freaking everyone up, we have to look at the technology that came before it. The shroud has always been full of strange details that just don't add up. Let's go back to 1898. A lawyer named Secondo Pia takes the very first photograph of the shroud. He's in his dark room developing the glass plate. He looks at the negative and he almost drops it. In the negative, the faint blurry image on the cloth suddenly becomes a crystal clear positive portrait. The image on the cloth was in effect a photographic negative centuries before photography was even invented. That alone is a detail that should make anyone pause. How do you paint a negative when the concept of a negative doesn't exist yet? A medieval artist paints what they see. They don't paint the inverted light values of a face so that 500 years later, a camera can reveal the true image. That would be like writing a book in binary code in the year 1300. But that was just the warm-up. Fast forward to the 1970s. A team of scientists from the Air Force Academy decided to run a photo of the shroud through a VP8 image analyzer. This wasn't a toy. This was a piece of hardware used by NASA to map the topography of the Moon and Mars. It turns brightness into height. If you put a normal photograph of a person, even a really good one, into a VP8, the result is a mess. The nose sinks into the face. The eyes bulge out. It looks distorted. That's because in a photo, light comes from the sun or a lamp, creating shadows that have nothing to do with depth. A shadow under a nose makes the nose look dark, which the machine interprets as deep. But when they put the shroud image into the VP8, it didn't distort. It created a perfect, undistorted 3D relief of a human form. The scientists were stunned. The image contained accurate three-dimensional information. The darker parts were physically closer to the cloth, and the lighter parts were farther away. This is the puzzle that scientists have been stuck on for decades, a medieval date, but with seemingly futuristic technology embedded in the cloth. It's a total contradiction. And this is where the AI comes back in. The AI didn't just confirm the VP8 results, it refined them. The neural network stripped away the noise of the cloth weave and the burn marks from the fire of 1532. What was left was a topographic map of a human body that is anatomically flawless. The crazy part is the data shows that the body passes through the cloth. Let me explain. The image is consistent with a concept called volumetric projection. It's as if the body became radiant for a split second. And that radiation passed through the linen, leaving a scorch mark that recorded the distance. The AI found that this scorch is uniform. It doesn't penetrate the fibers. It sits on top. If an artist painted this, the paint would soak in. If a forger used a hot statue, the heat would burn through and spread sideways. But this image is precise, vertical, and incredibly high resolution. The AI analysis suggests that whatever formed this image acted in a straight line, completely ignoring gravity. Furthermore, the AI found something regarding the coins. You might have heard about this wild theory. Some researchers claim there are faint impressions of Roman coins, specifically Pontius Pilate leptons placed over the eyes. For years, this was debated. The AI analysis enhanced the contrast of the orbital areas and found circular distortions that match the size and shape of these coins. If this is true, It dates the shroud precisely to around 29 AD to 36 AD. A medieval forger wouldn't know to put rare first-century coins over the eyes, nor would they be able to paint them so faintly that they are only visible with 21st century computer enhancement. The AI also analyzed the blood. And get this, it's not paint. It is real human blood, type AB. But the weird thing is the condition of the blood. The AI analysis of the color spectrum shows that the blood is still reddish. Blood usually turns brown or black over time due to oxidation. The fact that it is still red suggests the presence of high levels of bilirubin, a chemical the body produces under extreme physical stress and torture. But more importantly, the blood was on the cloth before the image was formed. The AI can see that under the bloodstains there is no image. This means the blood soaked in and then the flash happened. If it were a painting, the artist would have had to paint the blood first, then paint the negative image around the blood without overlapping. That is technically impossible for a human hand. The AI has effectively taken the painting theory and thrown it out the window. It simply doesn't fit the data. We are looking at a cloth that acts more like a piece of photographic film that was exposed to a type of radiation we don't usually encounter in nature. The implications are huge. If this is a recording of an event, then something physically happened to that body that released a massive amount of energy. The AI is seeing the remnants of that energy signature. The timeline was about to break because the cloth was hiding a secret patch that fooled the world. Why the textbooks were wrong. Everyone thought the story ended in 1988. That was the year science supposedly drove a stake through the heart of the mystery. 3 separate labs, Oxford, Zurich, and Arizona, used radiocarbon dating on a sample of the shroud. The process, called accelerator mass spectrometry, counts individual carbon-14 atoms to determine age. It's incredibly precise. The labs came back with a date, 1260 to 1390 AD. The headlines screamed fake. The shroud was medieval. Game over. But almost immediately, things started to get messy, and that's putting it lightly. The sample they used was garbage. Officials cut a small swatch from a single corner of the shroud to minimize damage. But think about it. For centuries, this cloth was held up by its corners for public display. Thousands of hands touched it. It was exposed to smoke, candles, and sweat. More importantly, the shroud survived a massive fire in 1532. A group of nuns patched the damaged areas and sewed the shroud onto a new backing cloth. They performed what is called invisible reweaving, a technique so skilled that you can't tell the new thread from the old thread with the naked eye. A chemist named Raymond Rogers, who was part of the original research team, decided to look at the leftover threads from that 1988 sample. What he found under the microscope was stunning. The fibers from the sample corner were chemically different from the main body of the shroud. The sample threads were coated with a plant gum and interwoven with cotton. The main shroud is pure linen. There is no cotton in the main body. He also found traces of a dye used to match the color of the new threads to the old ones. His conclusion was explosive. The labs didn't date the shroud. They dated a medieval repair patch. It's like testing the age of the Great Pyramid by grabbing a sample from a Starbucks cup a tourist left on the steps. Of course, you're going to get a modern date. This threw the entire result into question, and recently new technology has stepped in to fill the gap. Scientists have used wide-angle X-ray scattering to inspect the structural degradation of the flax cellulose in the linen. Unlike carbon-14, this method isn't affected by dirt or new threads. It looks at how the atoms inside the flax have broken down over time. The results, they were shocking. The level of decay in the shrouds. Linen matches fabrics found in Masada, Israel, dating back to 55 to 74 AD. Another study used vibrational spectroscopy and came to the same conclusion. The cloth is roughly 2,000 years old. So here is where we stand. We have a disputed carbon-14 test from a contaminated corner saying medieval. And we have multiple new advanced tests saying 1st century, but the AI adds another layer to this. It cross-referenced the Shroud with another artifact, the Sudarium of Edo. This is a smaller cloth kept in Spain, believed to be the face cloth used to cover Jesus' head immediately after death before he was wrapped in the shroud. The Sudarium has a documented history going back to the 7th century, way before the supposed medieval forgery date of the shroud. The AI compared the bloodstains on the Sudarium with the bloodstains on the shroud. The match was perfect. The blood type is the same. The shape of the stains align geometrically if you place the Sudarium over the shroud's face. This implies both cloths covered the same face at the same time. If the Sudarium is older than the Middle Ages, then the shroud must be too. So even if you still cling to the medieval date, you are left with an even bigger problem. You have to explain how a medieval forger in a castle somewhere managed to create a nanoscale image with embedded 3D topographic data that perfectly matches the atomic decay of ancient linen and aligns perfectly with a separate cloth hidden in Spain. It's just not plausible. The forgery theory requires the forger to be a time traveler with a laser lab and a degree in forensic pathology. The AI bypassed the political mess of the carbon dating and went straight to the physics. And the physics are telling us that this object does not behave like a painting or a Rubov. It behaves like a witness to an event. The scientists are now looking at the shroud not as a religious icon, but as a crime scene. And the evidence left behind is pointing to a cause of death, or rather a cause of the image. That is theoretically impossible. If it wasn't a painting, something turned that body into a blinding flash of light. When matter turns into light, we have ruled out paint. We have ruled out acids. We have ruled out a heat rub. So what is left? How do you create a superficial 3D encoded negative image on linen without destroying the cloth? This is where the science gets really out there. We are entering the territory of wild theories. But remember, these theories are based on the hard data the AI just spit out. The leading scientific explanation right now is something called vacuum ultraviolet radiation. Researchers at the ENA agency in Italy spent years trying to replicate the shroud's image. They blasted linen fabrics with Excimer lasers. They found that a very specific type of short-wavelength ultraviolet light could color the linen in the exact same way as the shroud. It only colors the very top layer about 200 nanomay deep without burning the rest. But here's the catch. To get that image on a human-sized cloth, you would need a burst of radiation equivalent to 34 trillion watts of vacuum UV light. To put that in perspective, that is more power than any searchlight on Earth. It is comparable to a nuclear event, but without the heat. It's a pulse of energy shorter than 40 billionth of a second. If the pulse was any longer, the cloth would have vaporized. If it was any weaker, the image wouldn't have formed. It had to be perfect. So here is the wild theory that the AI data supports. The body in the shroud didn't just decompose, it dematerialized. Some physicists have proposed the collapsed state theory. They suggest that the body underwent a process where its mass was converted directly into energy. Einstein's famous equation E equals mc squared tells us that a small amount of mass contains a huge amount of energy. If the atoms in a human body were to suddenly decay or transform, it would release a flash of radiation. The AI detected that the image is orthographic. This means the radiation moved in a perfectly straight line up and down, perpendicular to gravity. It didn't radiate out in a sphere. This suggests a controlled event. Think of it like an event horizon, the point of no return around a black hole. But instead of gravity, this was an event horizon of biology. The body reached a critical state and phase shifted. Another theory gaining traction is the corona discharge theory. This involves a massive electrostatic discharge. Imagine the body becoming charged with millions of volts of electricity, creating a plasma discharge that scorched the linen. The AI found patterns consistent with high-voltage fractal discharges known as Lichtenberg figures, which are often found after lightning strikes. But the most mind-bending theory is the fourth-dimensional hypothesis. Some theoretical physicists have looked at the AI's 3D mapping and suggested that the image looks like a 3D object being pushed through a 2D plane. If a three-dimensional object passes through a two-dimensional world, it leaves a cross-section. But if a body were to move into a higher dimension, the energy release might leave a shadow on our three-dimensional world, which on a 2D cloth looks like the Shroud image. It sounds like science fiction, but the Shroud is the only object on Earth that possesses these properties. And get this, the AI found absolutely no signs of putrefaction. Usually, a body begins to decompose after 40 hours, releasing liquid and ammonia that would destroy the image and rot the cloth. The Shroud shows no signs of this. This means the body was there long enough to form the bloodstains and rigor mortis, but vanished before decomposition could start. The body didn't get up and walk away. If it had, the bloodstains would be smeared. The AI analysis shows the bloodstains are pristine. The fibers of the cloth are not broken or dragged. This implies the body disappeared from inside the cloth without disturbing the fabric. It effectively passed through the linen. We are talking about mechanically transparent matter. So if this is a medieval fake, the forger had access to technology that exceeds 21st century science. They needed a UV laser array, a particle accelerator, and a knowledge of quantum mechanics. And if it's not a fake, well then, we are looking at the physical residue of a singularity. The AI didn't find a brushstroke. It found the signature of a flash that lasted a fraction of a second but left a mark that has survived for 2,000 years. So here is the final controversial question. Do you think the AI found proof of a supernatural event? Or is this the most elaborate genius prank in human history that we still can't figure out? What if we are just scratching the surface of physics we haven't discovered yet? Let me know your theory in the comments. And if you want to keep exploring the unknown, smash that like button and subscribe for more videos like this.